or for the APNU-AFC coalition. Parties from that which I came, I also represent women, I represent youth, and I represent strongly indigenous women. Issues over the years when it comes to members of parliament, male members of parliament from the PPP that are completely disrespectful. So far that member was removed from parliament. Now we're left to handle and deal with Kwame McCoy and Anand Prasad. We need to speak about these matters, and I'm telling you, particularly today, I decided to put forward a statement on it because today we had secondary school students sitting in the National Assembly in total disbelief that this is what is transpiring. The PVP have no concern or respect. The chief whip for the PVP, Madam Gail Teixeira, and I'll give her the respect of saying Madam Gail Teixeira. Never disrespected her. She does not have control over Kwame McCoy and Anand Prasad. They carry on in her presence and she cannot stop them. So it says a lot. Because she cannot tell them that do not go in that direction. You know, today, I believe that when these matters occur, you have to really take it into perspective. And I sat there for a while and I thought to myself, you know, I really have to address this publicly because this is not just for me. And if we are to step back and allow it to continue, we are leaving Guyana to go down a very dangerous pathway, particularly when it comes to women's rights in this country, indigenous rights in this country. Now, all of the comments that comes in my direction from Anand Prasad and Kwame McCoy is based on where I come from, right? So how dare me, an indigenous woman, come from Bartica this, Bartica that. That's the line of comments they take, right? So it is important for persons to understand, particularly indigenous women, that they love to go out to and say, oh, we care so much for the indigenous people. They have zero respect for indigenous women. They see indigenous women as tools to be used and abused. So when I step forward with confidence and I do not feel intimidated by these individuals, they feel that I am stepping out of my zone and I'm stepping out of this box in which indigenous women should be kept in, because that's how they operate. And you would note also that the indigenous members of parliament from the PPP, and it should be spoken about, when they stand up to speak, the only matters that they're allowed to speak on is matters
of the indigenous
concerning indigenous people. They're not allowed to venture out of that box. They're not allowed to aspire to go beyond any of that. And so when I stand up there and I speak, we have all the derogatory comments. But you have to understand that they will have to go there because they never critique on any bit of substance.
Have nothing.
Right? So I welcome engagements and constructive debate and criticism from anyone. But when it comes to the mediocrity, when it comes to disrespect for women, we have to put our foot down on that in particular.
I definitely agree with you on this. I mean, persons viewing, like I said earlier, these debates, you really have no clue what happens in that dome when persons are giving presentations. And you rightfully say that the PVPC government and ministers and officials really show a disdain to indigenous persons and women in particular, in the tone in which they take it. And we've seen this several times over. I mean, we had, I think it was last budget, where you had to rebut Kwame and remind him of his CXC status.
And it was because, and I'm happy that you brought that up, because that was because
of another
the
back and
speaker,
forth.
that was because whilst I was making a presentation, he was in the background shouting derogatory comments at me, and the speaker
Because
was
did
not
nothing.
stop him. So that warranted that response, and that stopped him.
And what makes all of this worse, the things that you're seeing and hearing when you're in there, the way they speak to women, and like you're pointing out, the two most blaring persons inside of that room is Kwame McCoy and
Anand Prasad.
And the way in which it is done, it is at the lowest level. And what is more alarming is that no female from the government side can say anything. Most times they just sit there and, listen to what is being said. And some of them, at times, dependent, chime in as well. And this is why we have to take a stand and talk about these things, have persons understand what is happening. And that is why the treatment that we see generally across the board coming from the government with the population we're seeing, and particularly in indigenous communities, like you mentioned the issue of one former minister who had to be removed. And you still have a few of them who are currently sitting there that we're not going to call names for, whose names have been called in the very same thing. So, it has to be addressed at some point and, deal with it in a manner that will have some result. But I believe what is worse is the speaker at no time deals with these issues. And I mean, yesterday we did talk to our viewers where we started out with the speaker saying that fairness is subjective.
Well, that was a profound statement, saying that is by his own admission.
Yes.
That what he defines fairness as is not necessarily what the world defines fairness as.
Although there are rules
and
regulations that should be followed in the parliament. I don't know. I think in another few minutes, I don't think we have much more time. We should be seeing the presentation of Ms. MP Maureen Philadelphia, who will be dealing with the matters on the East Coast. But before we go, is there anything else you want to say on this issue?
Well, I would say one last thing, and for the many persons viewing, particularly when it comes to young women out there and indigenous women, that if there was ever a time that I needed a reminder as to why I am here, that was today. I am not here because it is a lackluster system that I just feel that I can just come and be a part of. I am here because representation for women is necessary. And today, more than ever before, with the PPP administration bringing the parliament down to the level at which it is right now, with the aid of the speaker, it is now, I am now convinced, and it is my conviction, that I must stand up and I must continue to represent women. I must continue to represent indigenous women in particular at the level of the National Assembly, and I will not fail you. I will continue to fight for each and every one of you so that your voices will be heard through mine.
And I must say that you are doing a brilliant job at it. And I believe that's why we have these attacks, because, whenever you speak on the issues, which you always do, there is no rebuttal. There is nothing that deals with the figures, the numbers, what you're showing in the comparisons. It always becomes a personal attack. And I
Correct.
believe for this is day two, and so far, almost all of the government speakers have not addressed their ministries or their portfolios. They have literally stood there, gone all around the world, talked about elections, talked about foolishness, and not tell the nation why we should see this budget as one for the people or the country at large. They have not been able to do that in any form, fashion, or style. So I believe some of what we're seeing is a distraction.
Yes.
And, so that people will, talk and laugh about things you're saying instead.
Their strategy always is, and it has been continued since 2020 to now, that when you can't hit the message, shoot the messenger. Basically. So that's what you're seeing all the time. You continue to see it, but again, I will say that we cannot just step back. We have to step forward, because if we decide to be silent, then we allow them to take over, and it is a dangerous pathway for Guyana. So not on my watch.
Right.
Indigenous women will be represented. Women throughout Guyana will be represented. I will make it my duty to stand up to persons like Kwame McCoy and Anand Prasad, who make it their duty to fight and break down every level of accomplishments made by women and Indigenous women in Guyana.
Thank you so much, MP Joretta, for this. And I hope our viewers will continue watching. Shortly, you will be seeing the presentation of MP Marine Philadelphia, who will be our last speaker in this Day 2 debate for the coalition. And of course, tomorrow we will return, and I do believe our starter for tomorrow will be none other than Mr. MP Vinthroy Jordan, who is the Shadow Minister for Agriculture. So do stay tuned, keep updated, and we will be here to share any other information coming out on these debates.